All right. If there's a problem to be solved, you can solve it with automation. And so the one I have here is a special one just for the region, APJC, and Oxana, who's sort of been leading all of the spot initiatives and DevNet security and all, helped me build it. And I want to explain the problem first. And I think this problem will apply to most parts of APJC because in speaking with customers where I've shown this exact example across the region, not just Australia, New Zealand, but Singapore recently, India as well, just yesterday, the use case is generic. It applies to everyone. And the use case or the problem statement is, I have unstructured threat intel. How do I ingest it and do that whole CTR magic that you do manually, but do it in the backend automatically? Maybe even put it on a schedule so I can ingest some unstructured threat intel, run it through all my products, and then come back with some alerts or maybe even response, right? So here's the one example that we use to build this workflow. So with all the various geopolitical issues going on, the Australia government noticed that there were some state-sponsored cybersecurity campaigns going on against Australian government agencies and some enterprises as well. And they did a great blog about it. They published what it is, like details of TTPs and the MITRE stuff. But how do you understand if you're impacted by this or not? And this could apply to Singapore with your cybersecurity agency. This could apply to India. There's an equivalent there, I understand. So really anywhere in the region where you're looking at some similar situation, unstructured threat intelligence coming from a government cybersecurity agency saying, here's a list of observables. Have a look if you're impacted by it or not. And what's the next step, right? So the link that I have in there will bring me here. On the Australian Cybersecurity Center's website, they define it. They say, here's the mitigations, MFA and patching, which Cisco can help with. Awesome. But how do you go ahead and understand if you have a problem or not? So they published a CSV file in this case. So you could equate this unstructured threat intel. It could be in a CSV file. It could be in a blog like the Talos blogs. It could be a SANS sort of posting where they publish these things. And typically our customers are going to take all of these observables. So you're going to take all of these observables one by one and drop them into each product, right? Now we all understand the file hashes will go in AMP. You'll do a search in AMP. The domains will go in umbrella. You'll do a search. Have I seen it? Is there any citing? And that's the value of CTR, right? So we all understand I can take all of these, plug them in the SecureX ribbon, and bring it up in this glorious dashboard, which is CTR, right? So that's super easy. It's a single UI, simplifies everything for us. But we want to automate this further, right? You should not even have to look at this dashboard unless you really want to go and look at a snapshot, because generating this dashboard, as you all may have experienced with 105 observables, which is what this is going to take you 5 minutes or more, and you're just staring at the screen, right? And it 100% depends on all your integrations, which in my case is few, right? So, but for a customer, they'll have a fair few integrations, Cisco third party, and it's going to go and query all of them for 100 of these observables. That's going to take some time, right? So I'd rather put this on a schedule, automate it, and let it run in the backend. And this is where the power of orchestration comes into play. Now, the key things to keep in mind here, and this workflow that Oxana helped me build, again, she did an awesome job on this one. She's helped me sort of put it on GitHub, and it's on my blog, and everyone can download it. And if you do download it and plan to play around with it, because this will run in your home environment. I'm running it on my home network. It's just querying my own integrations. You can just go click import, browse, and just get the JSON from GitHub and import it in here, right? So automations which are easy to share are important as well. And so we have that option, right? So in SecureX, we can easily share automations. You can export anything as JSON and then import it as a JSON. Now, if you look at this workflow, there's a few things to keep in mind here, because you build targets, you use some variables as you build that workflow, And that's all we are doing here. Now, our goal here, we want to fetch that unstructured threat intel, which in this case is an IOC CSV file from ACSC. Could be a Talos blog. You could be querying the Talos blog RSS feed and then extracting some observables. So that's step 2, extract the observables using the threat response API. Look for any local sightings. Do I have some machine which is a target? So if I have local sightings, I have targets. And if there are any targets, then for each product that I query, when I find a target, post a WebEx Teams message or send me an email, and then also create an update casebook. So that's our end goal. Now, if we go back to our workflow that I've got here, and I'll scroll down on the properties. So I'm not clicked on any module. If I go click on, just look at the properties here, I've got a few things to care about here. Email, right? Email recipient, email sender, and I have created an account, which is an email account, which is this action orchestrator test at gmail.com. So you need to provide the credentials, and that's what it's going to use to send the email alerts. There is a WebEx Teams room ID, and in the workflow README, you can see how to get that ID. There's a bot which you can use to get a team room ID. You just add the bot in the team room, and it comes back to you with the ID. And here's my WebEx token, which is going to be used to post these messages. And you can get this WebEx token, albeit a 12-hour expiring one, from developer.webex.com. So just go in there, log in, go into the API section, and it'll give you an option to copy a token. And that's all I'm using here. So this is a 12-hour token, which I just put in right here. Now, the workflow, if you look at it, is that colorful chart that I had. That's what it's doing. It's getting the indicators. So it's making the HTTP request to, guess where, ACSC, the CSV file exactly in this case. Now you can replace this. So you can take this workflow and you can replace it with anything, right? This could be the Talos blog as an example. You could point it to the Talos blog. In this case, this is pointing to cyber.gov.au, and here's my CSV file. Now, if you do point it to a blog or something similar, you don't need this code here. So the rest of these modules here, again, these are all dragged and dropped from here, nothing special. They're just doing some cleanup, because for a CSV file, there's some commas and all, you've got to get rid of them. But if this was a HTTP request to a Talos blog or something along those lines, which is clean, you don't need to typically do cleanup, because we can extract observables straight away. So here's the parse function. So here is where I'm using the threat response extraction option. So that's, if I go in here, Cisco threat response on the side, you can see that it's basically I'm generating a token, right? So I'm doing that first step. Then from there, I'm doing the enrichment, which is here, the inspect, which is what this function is, right? So I just named it differently, but that's the CTR inspect function. So that's doing the parse. The enrich is this function here, just dragged and dropped in here. For each step, you see that I have to generate a token and then do the necessary function, right? So in this case, I'm then doing the enrichment. Here's my for loop, which is saying, did you find a target? If yes, construct a WebEx Teams message and send that out, and also send an email. If no, do the same thing. Just say, send me a WebEx Teams message saying nothing found, and then send me an email as well. And there's my logic at the bottom, which is another for loop, which is now doing a token generation and updating a casebook. Now, in this case, if this is a subsequent run, it will update the casebook. If this is the first time this workflow is running, it will create a new casebook, and then in either case, it will post a message on WebEx Teams. So that's the playbook, right? Let's run it. Now, when I try to run it, you'll notice that it will ask me just to double check if I've got all those variables right. You can disable this. In this case, because this is meant for customers to use, they might want to change this. You might want to change the token if you know that a 12-hour token obviously has expired. So it's the email sender, the recipient, the Teams room ID, and the token. Let's go click on run, and this will get that process going, right? So you know that this thing will run. It'll turn green, red, and blue depending on where it is. You can troubleshoot all of this right here. I want to show you quickly while that's running what the output would look like. So you can see that's my Teams room, which I've got, which I put the ID in for. And here it's gone and queried AMP. It's gone and queried AMP, file reputation and global intelligence, Talos, nothing found, great. Umbrella, 100 sightings on my network. That's my home IP address. Feel free to copy it down. Virus total, it didn't find anything. AMP for endpoints, 20 sightings, and that's basically AMP demo data. That's a demo iOS device with the IP address, the MAC address. And here's the casebook that was updated. Now, the challenge I have for all of you is, if you have the time and appetite, take this and add a response option to it, right? Isolate. And that should be very easy for you because that is a generic Cisco provided workflow already, right? So you just have to nest that workflow in, just something for you to do. You can also automate an incident creation, which I have not got in the workflow. So that whole manual process, which we were trying to do earlier, now all 100% automated.